Hey everyone, today I'm going to be doing a video talking to you about these iron sights here from Ultradyne. Now, you guys have seen me talk about other iron sights here on the channel, but these sights work a little bit differently than pretty much any iron sights I've ever used, and I think might have some features that are appealing to some of the people who watch this channel. Now, I'm going to be doing a couple different tests to see how effective these iron sights are for me and hopefully be able to communicate what kind of results you might be able to expect from them. And just FYI, we're going to be shooting it with my 20-inch AR here. This upper has a Faxon Firearms Match Series 223 Wild Barrel with a Midwest Industries handguard, Midwest Industries upper, etc., etc. So rather than tease you guys for a while about what makes these sights different, might as well go ahead and talk about it right now. And that is the sight picture that these allow you to do. Now, a lot of you might be familiar with your standard PEEP rear sight and standard A2 front posts on AR-15s, where you have to have your front sight focus, put your whatever target you're aiming at on top of your front post, and then that's your sight picture. However, when you're shooting at extended ranges, that sight picture becomes very, very difficult to maintain, at least for me. My target, if it's a couple hundred yards away, is going to be very, very blurry, which can make accurate, precise shots at longer ranges very difficult with iron sights, again, at least in my case. So instead of your standard A2 front post, what this has is basically a ring for the front sight that you aim through. So what that allows you to do is it has you line up your rear sight, your front sight, and then you put your target right in the middle of that front ring, which, among other things, allows you to have a clear target focus so you can make sure that your target is properly centered in your sights. Now, these iron sights also have some other interesting features that I'll get into, but first I want to just go ahead and start shooting with this thing and see what kind of groups we can get at 100 and 200 yards. All right, so that's 5 shots at 100. Let's just go straight out to 200 now. All right, let's go ahead and just walk down and see what happened. So here we are at 100 yards. We have a 5-shot group, and it's worth mentioning at this point, I have the sights are zeroed for 200 yards. However, I got that zero at 25 yards. So I'm kind of interested to see what happens at 200, but I did expect it to be a little high here. But again, we'll see more once we get to 200. And I'll talk a little bit more about the zeroing process once we're done here. And it's also worth mentioning I'm shooting hand loads, which while not bad, I'm also not a great hand loader either. So we're looking at, and I thought I had my measuring tape, but we're looking at maybe 2.5-ish inches here. I'll measure it when I get home. But for those of you who've seen my other iron sight shooting, that's not too shabby. I can definitely live with that. So let's go ahead and see what it looks like at 200 yards. So now we're down here at 200 yards, and it looks like I dropped 1 shot low, but I want to say, first of all, for having a 25-yard zero, we're pretty dang close here at 200, so I can definitely live with that. I might adjust it just ever so slightly to the left. But if we're looking at these 4 here, we're maybe looking at 3.5-ish inches, but with this whole thing, we're probably looking at closer to 5. Again, I'll get the exact measurements when I get home. I'll have those on the screen. But again, for a guy with glasses shooting 200 yards with iron sights, that I am very, very happy with. And again, that's not something I can normally expect with iron sights. Honestly, I'd be happy with a group that size with a scope. But again, for what it is, I can't ask for much more than that. Now, I can honestly say that I'm very happy with the groups that I just showed you. Again, shooting iron sights for me has never been my strong suit. So to get that level of precision out of iron sights like this, I am very happy with. So I said there's some other interesting things going on here that I said I'd talk about, so I'm going to go ahead and do that now. First of all, these things are pretty customizable by the end user. So you have a couple different options in regards to your rear sight aperture and your front sight. So back here, we have this little thing that threads out, and you can change the size of your rear aperture by changing out which insert you use. So right now I have it on the finest one to hopefully give me the best precision. However, one thing I've noticed is with the finest front sight, which is what I'm using right now, I start to lose a little bit of the contrast at these longer ranges where some of these targets are in the dark. I feel like if I'd used the slightly larger one, I'd be able to better center whatever my sights are on in that front sight. Now, if you're on a very well lit range, shooting at high contrast like steel silhouettes or anything like that, this is going to work just fine. However, at 200 yards and in kind of a cloudy, overcast day, I start to lose it a little bit, so I might jump up to one of the larger size front posts. Now, if the rear sight if you want something that's going to be a little bit more usable in close quarters type situations, you can actually thread out the adapters, and then you have a very large, almost like ghost ring rear sight, and then you can just put that little ball as the outer part of the front sight on your target and be totally good to go and have a lot faster target acquisition. But again, if you want that really fine precision with iron sights at long range, I haven't found any iron sights that beat this for myself. Now, let's say you want to be able to switch back and forth between both. There's actually a little storage compartment on the range adjustment knob that you can actually thread your one of your rear sight inserts into. So if you want to be able to go back and forth, that's a really interesting option for people to use. Now, would I necessarily recommend that for any sort of like go to war gun? No, because I have a feeling things might, unscrew themselves. They're going to come out, and what's the point of having this thing available if you're going to just like blue Loctite it in there to keep it from falling out? So to me, this is more of a range use item. However, again, it gives you a really good opportunity to have a really good precision at longer ranges on a nice, closed-in range. Now, I kind of alluded to the range adjustment back here. So as I said earlier in the video, you zero it for 200 yards, and it actually comes with instructions that tell you, if you don't have 200 yards to shoot at, what closer ranges you can zero it for to be able to replicate a 200 yard zero. So as I said, I zeroed it at 25 yards, which according to the instructions mean I need it to be 1.4 inches below my point. My point of impact needs to be 1.4 inches below my point of aim, and that'll give me a 200 yard zero, which, looking at the 200 yard target, was pretty dang close. I'd say maybe a half inch low, and then I just need to adjust the windage slightly, and then it's going to be hitting dead on at 200 yards. Now, these are calibrated for your standard M193 ball ammo, so once you start getting outside that bullet weight and that bullet velocity, you're going to have to fine-tune it yourself. But again, because you have the fine adjustments back here, you can really hone it in, and as long as you know what your dopes are supposed to be, you can use this rear sight no problem whatsoever. Now, because of the range adjustment back here, you're actually supposed to do all your sight adjustments for zeroing on this front post, which actually works pretty interestingly, and this is where some of the really neat engineering comes in. So what you have is basically a spring-loaded shell that is what the little protective ears are. You press that entire thing down, and then you can just rotate that front sight up or down by hand. So you don't have to have any fancy tools. If you have your front sight adjustment tool, you can use that, but you really don't need them. You can do everything by hand, at least as far as elevation. Now, as far as windage goes, you have a little adjustment screw up here on the side, and that you might be able to get by hand, but I've had to use my little multi-tool to just click that left or right to be able to adjust for my windage. And then once you have this thing set, all you have to do is adjust this up or down depending on however far you're shooting, and you're good to go. Now, if you are on like a windy range and you're having to adjust for wind on the fly, there is an adjustment knob back here, and there are little markings so you can know what center is, and then if you have to do one or two clicks to adjust for wind, you can very easily click that back to center and still be on at 200 yards. Now, as this is something I would say is well suited for a precision style rifle, one of the great things is you'll notice I folded that rear sight. If I throw this Vortex Diamondback here on top in a Midwest Industries mount, I have plenty of clearance between that and the rear sight, so I don't have to worry about not being able to mount a scope. Now this is set at an AR sight height, so you know, if you have low rings, you might start running into issues, but if you have something built for your AR, it's gonna work. Now, one of the other really nice things about these sights that I appreciate and have had issues with some other sights in the past is how positive the locks are on this. I've had some where there's really no good detent that's holding it either down or up. These have very positive positions, which is very nice. I don't want to have to worry about these things coming loose on me. If I have them up, I want them to stay up. If I have them down, I want them to stay down. Now, these aren't flip-ups or anything like that. You can't just push a button and have them pop up, but that's fine for me. That's one fewer thing to break. I would rather just have really good positive locking positions in up or down. Now, let's say you try out these front sights where you have a good target focus, you're looking through that ring, and you decide you're not a big fan of it. The nice thing is you can get a standard A2 front post to fit in this front sight, so you're not stuck with the sight picture you have here. If you decide you don't like it, you can still use the iron sights themselves. You just swap out that front sight, and then you still have the range adjustments for distance, and you still have the zeroing process, which I really like in regards to iron sights. So I've said a lot of really positive things about these sights, but what are the drawbacks if there are any? And I think if you were to go look at these, the first thing you might notice is the cost. These things are not cheap. Now there's a couple different variations you can get, a couple different sight setups you can get, so the price might fluctuate a little bit depending on the specifics you want, but they are not cheap. Now, that said, I think what you're getting for that money is unique to these and does justify that price for people looking for this level of precision out of their iron sights. Again, there's a lot of really interesting engineering going on in the ways that the front sight here adjusts, being able to have the click adjustable distance markings for your rear sight, being able to swap out rear apertures and front apertures, or go back to your regular A2 style front post if you prefer that. So again, if you're looking for these features, I think that this is a very justifiable price, but for a large percentage of shooters who are just out there plinking on the range within 100 yards, probably most of the time within 50 yards, you don't necessarily need that level of precision. I mean, if you want to go shoot a service rifle match and use your iron sights only and still be in the running at 200 and 300 yards and probably even beyond, if I had longer ranges to shoot, I would do it here. These are going to be a good sight option for you. But again, if you're just, setting your guns on your truck bed and blasting away at a refrigerator in somebody's back 40, you probably don't need these type of sights. So are these for everybody? No. But again, for the people who need the features that these provide, I think these are an excellent option, very well built, very interesting usages here, and something I think you'll be very happy with. Now, one thing I want to mention is there is, like I said, a different way you can set up this front sight, and that is if you don't want to mount it to your handguard here. So like I have an 18-inch handguard on this, which gives me a fairly good sight radius, but being a free float rail, it's good that it's free float, but it does mean that if I start applying pressure in different areas, that front sight is going to move relative to the barrel, which means that my zero is going to be off, especially at longer distances. So what you can do is you can get a front sight that mounts to a specific muzzle device and have it directly attached to your barrel, which for most people is going to give you a longer sight radius and is going to marry that front sight to your barrel, which means that you don't have to worry about that zero being adjusted depending on how pressure is being applied to your handguard. So that might appeal to some people, and you can even offset it. So if you want to maintain your scope and have offset iron sights, you can do that as well. So if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, go ahead and throw those in the comment section down below. Let me know what you think of these sights. If you have some of these sights, definitely let me know what your experience has been so that other people who watch this video can see your input as well. I want to give a shout out to my patrons for making videos like this affordable, which I should say, full disclosure, I did not pay for these sights. These were provided at no cost by Ultradyne, so take that for what it is. But all the ammo I'm shooting has been hand loaded thanks to contributions from patrons, and I post all my content there early, do some exclusive content, we do live streams, giveaways, all that fun stuff. So if that's something that interests you, definitely follow the link below. But anyway, with all that said, as always, I hope you're able to get something out of this video, and I really appreciate you watching.